Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite here. This week's video I wanted to discuss the top 5 skills that you'll need as a prepper to take you to the next level prepping. Aside from buying canned goods and freeze-dried foods, all that kind of stuff that you hear an awful lot of videos about, and how you need to stock up and stockpile, get your food stores in order. Aside from all that, you're going to need some skills. It's not going to be very long, given the economic uncertainty, given the pandemic uncertainty, that we're going to need to develop and have available those skills that we're going to need to be able to survive what's coming. So here's the top five, my top 5 anyway, skills that you need to explore, learn, and practice. So number 1 is food preservation. And I got a whole bunch of stuff laid out here that I think is pretty important. We do a lot of canning. Last year, I think we probably put up 50 or 55 quarts of tomatoes, green beans, other kind of vegetables, salsas, that kind of stuff. And we use this Presto pressure canner. And we've been using this thing for years. And they're really not all that expensive. I think this one was about $100. The All-Americans, the top of the line kind of stuff, can run you $400 to $500. But they're really, really quite nice. Love to have one. We've got an electric stove with a glass top on it. And the All-Americans just aren't very compatible with that kind of a heat source. But these little Prestos work great, and we've put it through its paces. We've done hundreds and hundreds of quarts of vegetables and tomatoes and all kinds of cool stuff in this. The other thing that we use quite a bit, not as frequent as this, but very frequently, is this Excalibur Dehydrator. One of the best on the market. They're somewhat expensive. I got some notes here. This was about $300, and we picked it up probably 5 years ago. And we've done fruits, vegetables, we've made beef jerky in it, and it really does a really good job. It sucks up quite a bit of energy, but it really does a good job of preserving food through a dehydration methodology. And the food, if you prep it right and you do it right using the instructions that come with this thing, it really does work out good. So the third thing that we use pretty much once a week during this kind of a season that we've got going here, where we're beginning to harvest our garden, is the vacuum sealer. And we use this for all kinds of stuff. We generally buy chicken and beef and ground beef and steaks and stuff like that from our wholesale club, and break it up into small packages because there's just the two of us, and use this vacuum sealer to seal it up so that it can freeze easily. We put it into individual sized packages for us. We've used this thing for beans and rice and meats, all kinds of stuff. Very, very handy. This particular model is the Weston 2300. It was pretty expensive. It's almost industrial grade, and it was about $400. But it was well worth the investment. We've also got a small food saver vacuum sealer that's only about this big. And we use that frequently for the small stuff, if we're not going to be really looking for long-term storage, but just, you know, a couple weeks, couple months, something like that. We'll use that small one from Food Saver, and they're somewhere between $75 and $100, depending on which model you get. So The number one skill I think that you need to have as a prepper is food preservation skills. Know how to can, know how to vacuum seal, know how to dehydrate. A couple other things that I wanted to mention in relation to canning and other food preservation skills and thoughts and ideas is fermentation. How you make sauerkraut, how you make pickled onions, that kind of stuff. You can use fermentation, the fermentation techniques, very easy to look up on the internet, very easy to find in pretty much of the old-time cookbooks and food preparation type books. And speaking of food preparation books, one of the best that's out there is the Blue Book from Ball. It's one of the very best comprehensive food preservation canning instruction manual that you can find anywhere. And it's really worth picking it up wherever you can find it. Generally, garden stores will have it. I haven't seen it like at Lowe's and places like that, but you go to Walmart and maybe even Kmart if they're still in business in your area, and you can find the Ball Blue Book of Canning and Preserving. Teach you how to do vegetable canning, fruits and vegetables and jellies and jams and preserves and meats, all that kind of stuff. Really an excellent resource manual to have with you, part of the skill development that you need. The second skill that I think is going to be very important in the long run for us preppers to be able to develop and become somewhat proficient at is backyard gardening. You know, I live in a small, suburban neighborhood. We've got just less than 2 acres of property here, and had to clear quite a lot of trees years ago to be able to put the garden area together so that it would get the right kind of sunlight. I've built raised beds out there, and I'm probably on the 2nd generation now of raised beds out there. We plant tomatoes, green beans, peas, squash, leafy vegetables, spinach, lettuce. We've tried cabbage. It sort of worked, but it really didn't turn out all that great, but we got a couple of good cabbages out of it. Let's see, the green beans, the peas, the squashes, leafy vegetables, that kind of stuff. But we grow enough in a little garden. It's probably 30 by 40, maybe 40 by 40 is the area that we've got set aside. We grow enough out there to can up and preserve quite a lot of food so that we don't have to worry about buying it. Now, is it enough to feed us without ever having to go to the store again? No, it's not. But we've got the garden, and there are some skills that come along with having a garden that you need to be able to put down. You need to know how to do soil preparation and soil augmentation. Using peat moss, using compost, that kind of stuff to keep the soil full of nutrients so that the plants that you plant from seed out there can grow the way they need to grow. You need to know when to plant. So there's a ton of reference material out there about planting cycles, depending on which zone you may live in, when you can plant, when you need to start certain seeds indoors. We start pretty much all of our tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that indoors, and then harden them, and then take them out and plant them. This year was kind of an odd year. I don't know what it was. We had a very cold spring, and things just didn't take as quickly as possible. Usually by this time, the end of July, where we are right now, we've already put up a few dozen quarts of tomatoes. And right now, we've only picked enough to maybe do 3 or 4, maybe 5 quarts of tomatoes. There's still an awful lot of green tomatoes on the vines out there, but knowing when to plant, knowing when to harvest. Now this isn't a how-to video, so I'm not going to try to tell you when to plant your tomatoes, when to start the seeds, when to plant them in your garden. That's for you to develop your skill sets that's very particular to your area. I know what works for us. I know what doesn't work for us. We've been impetuous in years past and gotten things planted way too early, harvested way too early, and just didn't get the production that we should have gotten. And over time we've refined what we do, when we start the seeds indoors, when we harden them, how we harden them, and then take them outside and get them planted. So that works pretty well. So you got composting, you got to maintain your garden, you got to keep the weeds down, you got to know how to trim your tomato plants, how to trim back your squash plants and stuff like that, so that you can get some maximum production out of the plants that you do have. Now we don't plant a whole lot. I think maybe this year we've got 25 or thereabouts tomato plants and just a couple pepper plants, 3 or 4 cucumber plants out there, some squash. We had early season lettuce and spinach and stuff like that, carrots, but that's pretty much run its cycle. We're going to do another fall planting of those leafies, the lettuce and that kind of stuff, carrots, all that. We'll probably do that in September, maybe even October, because it's stays pretty warm here right up until Thanksgiving or so. So we've got October, November time frames that we can plant the winter leafy greens that we enjoy eating. The other thing that we do is we convert one of our 4x8 raised beds into kind of a makeshift greenhouse, and we use just 10-foot PVC pipes, stick them in each of the corners so it kind of hoops up like that. Got 4 of those in, so they're about 2 feet apart. We run another straight piece across the top to kind of hold them together, and then cover it with 6 mil plastic. Works like a charm. It can extend your growing season, and for us, right up until January or even a little bit later. And you can also use it to get an early start on your spring vegetables, the lettuces and stuff like that, because it protects it from the real nasty cold freezing weather. So for $10 you can build a mini greenhouse on a 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed garden. Okay, next up, number 3 skill, alternate cooking and baking. If the electrical grid goes down, you're not going to have your electric range, your gas range. You might have a gas range if you still got propane and stuff like that, but alternate sources of food preparation and developing those kind of skills that you need to be able to cook food when you don't have power, I think is going to be a very important skill. So here's some thoughts. Open fire cooking. We did one of the best tasting beef stews I ever had on an open fire. We had a cast iron pot, and we put all the makings in there, stuck it over the open fire, and let it cook, and kept tasting, and let it cook, and let it taste. We finally got it so that it was just absolutely incredibly yummy. So, open fire cooking. There's a technique, there's a trick to it, there's a few tools that you're going to need. So investigate and research open fire cooking. It can be very, very helpful. The other thing is to perfect propane cooking. Now, we've got a barbecue that's fueled with propane, but there are other sources of cooking. The Coleman stoves are propane fired. Make sure you've got the right kind of hookups, that you can hook up your 15-pound tanks to the Coleman stove. If you've got the flat top grills and stuff like that that certain of the companies make, you can use that to cook on, so that you don't have to rely on electricity or the electric grid to do that kind of stuff for you. A sun oven is really a nifty thing. I've never played with a sun oven. I've seen them work. I've watched a number of videos on it. I don't have one, but it's on our list for the next time we see one that we can get a good deal on. So a sun oven, good idea. Charcoal, we've got a Weber kettle that we've had for years and years. Got lots of charcoal, got all the stuff that we need. You can cook a lot of good stuff on charcoal in a Weber kettle. So, number 4 on the skills that you need to work on, develop if you don't have, is your home and equipment maintenance skills. Now, I spent my entire career, college, after college, working in an office as an accountant, a couple of different industries, banking and hospitals and stuff like that. And I never really got exposed a lot to that kind of stuff. The maintenance stuff, the changing oil in vehicles, and sharpening chainsaws, and little carpentry kind of stuff. I did work as a carpenter for a short period of time with my brother-in-law, and it was good basic learning, but some guys are just absolutely terrifically talented. But the things that I wanted to stress with respect to home and equipment maintenance is at least know how to do the basic stuff. Know how to change the oil in your lawnmower, in your lawn tractors, in your vehicles. Know how to maintain your chainsaw, your gas-powered chainsaws and your gas-powered weed trimmers and things like that. Know how to keep them up to date. Know how to change the spark plug. Have the right tools available to you to change those spark plugs, and get in there and change the oil and do all that kind of stuff. Seasonal maintenance is very, very important. Here in North Carolina, where we live, we stop mowing our lawns shortly after Thanksgiving and start it back up around the 1st of March. So that period of time through December, January, and February is about the only time that our lawnmowers can sit idle. But it's a good idea to prep them. Make sure that when you put them up, that you've drained the gas out of them so that you don't get any weird ball gas buildup in there. You don't get that varnishy buildup. Make sure your air filters are clean. Change your spark plugs periodically. Change your oil whenever it needs it. Most of them say 15 to 20 hours of use, and you got to change the oil. Spark plugs probably should be done at least once a year, maybe once every 2 years if you got a really good spark plug. But have the tools available to you. Learn how to do those basic maintenance skills on your equipment. They will last a lot longer. And related to that is to develop your network of the professionals. Get to know the electricians in your area. Get to know the plumbers in your area. Get to know the small engine repair guys in your area. And when you need them, use them. Don't let your equipment sit there that just ain't working. Go spend a couple of bucks, hire a professional, have them come in and fix you up. We had a tremendous amount of positive luck with a local electrician doing a lot of work around here for us last spring. We've had a local plumber come in and do quite a lot of work for us from a plumbing standpoint when we had a little bit of a plumbing problem. Had a small engine repair thing that I couldn't fix, and called in the small engine repair guy, and he was in and out of here in an hour with a perfect fix, and everything worked out just fine. So get to know and develop the professional network that you need to make sure that your home and your equipment is in good repair. If you're lucky enough to live in a rural or even a rural suburban type area, and you're lucky enough to be able to have chickens, animal husbandry can be an extraordinarily valuable gift when the dark days are upon us. Got neighbors across the street that have probably got a dozen chickens. They're layers. They probably get 3 or 4 dozen eggs a week out of that group of chickens that they've got. There's another couple just up the street just a little bit that have got maybe a half a dozen, maybe 7 or 8 chickens at maximum, and they never have to buy eggs. Their little group of chickens keeps them very well supplied. I don't know of anybody in this particular neighborhood that's doing anything with meat birds or anything like that, but they all look pretty similar. So if that's what you want to do, you got to be able to know how to properly feed them, make sure that they've got the right nutrition, they get the right exercise, they got the right amount of water, that you keep them secure from local critters, the foxes and the coyotes. And believe me, even right here where we are in a suburban area just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, my game cameras pick up on foxes, on coyotes, all kinds of weird looking critters, raccoons for sure. Pretty much every night of the week I'm seeing a raccoon on the videos out there. So you got to know how to keep your chickens safe. You got to know how to feed them properly. You got to know how to keep them watered. And you can enjoy an awful lot of fun raising chickens and enjoy the fruits of their labors. So, in summary, the skills that you're going to need to rise to the next level as a prepper, beyond just buying canned goods, beyond just making sure that you've got water and shelter and a means of self-defense, is you got to develop the skills. These, I think, are top 5 skills. Love to hear from you all on what you think are going to be extraordinarily valuable skills when the S does hit the fan. But my top 5, food preservation, this kind of stuff, home equipment maintenance, gardening, alternate forms of cooking and food prep, and animal husbandry if you're lucky enough to be able to do that. So, those are the top 5 skills that I've got. If you have some ideas, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you like these kind of videos, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button when you can, and I'll hope to see you all on the next video.